Last Quarter Moon Phase, Finding Our Way Through the Dark by Demetra George. The last quarter moon phase, the moon is 90 to 45 degrees behind the sun. Keywords are reevaluate, turn away, and revise. The straight-edged moon of the last quarter moon phase is half light and half dark, and the light will now rapidly diminish. In the plant cycle, the harvest is reaped, and whatever fruit is left on the vine withers and decomposes. In the previous disseminating moon phase, the goal of the cycle has peaked and has been accomplished. In cyclical process, when the form has filled the purpose for which it is intended and used up its store of vital energy, the movement is now to let go of the obsolete dying form. The new seed that is forming must begin the process of severing itself from its parent plant. The keynote of the last quarter moon phase is that of the reorientation away from what has already been transpired towards some intimations of the future. The second phase of the lunation cycle is geared towards the realization of meaning, rather than the building of forms called from the first half of the cyclical process. Rudar called this phase a crisis in consciousness, because the crisis that occurs at the last quarter moon phase is not one of action, but rather one of thought. Based on the exposure to different information encountered in the previous disseminating moon phase, the evolving soul starts to question its previous beliefs and values. In light of the new understanding, it must now begin to discard old ways of thinking and behaving that no longer work and no longer harmonize or fit in its developing consciousness. What had been built up now must be torn down. The last quarter phase people may experience this process as hearing the first grumblings of the discontent that arise from within. Their lives are marked with the continual turning away from what they have accomplished. Disillusionment sets in as they are unable to continue a lifestyle that has become devoid of meaning. Last quarter people go through at least one major life-altering event where they are forced to probe deeply into the validity of their beliefs, philosophy, religion, and values. This precipitates the inner psychological crisis where they must reevaluate all that they've accepted as being true. They question, challenge, and often turn away from many of their taken for granted assumptions, values learned from their parents, society, and collective. It is a lifetime marked of rebelling against the status quo, destroying old, limiting ideologies. The last quarter phase people must sever and let go of conditioning into which they were born. If they cannot do so, they instead try to meet their present life circumstances on a basis of an ideology that is no longer valid, many of which are about growing in their lives will simply not work. Irritation, frustration, over-repeated failures can lead to an anger and a sense of resignation about their inability to be effective in their jobs and relationships. The crisis for many last quarter moon phase people is one of trying to figure out how to disengage themselves from the circumstances that they are based and now discard that belief system. Further adding to their growing tension is the fact that other people are often counting on them to continue to preserve some structure that they in part had been responsible for creating. Many last quarter moon phase people have difficulty in externalizing the process of inner change. The fermentation and decomposition of old belief systems generate with much tumult and disturbance in their minds. They reject the old, but they have not necessarily replaced it with anything new. They often maintain an aura of secrecy and protectiveness about themselves, not trusting the outer world will accept their turning away. As a result, they tend to wear a mask of their old selves, acting and performing as expected, while on the inside there exists a state of total anarchy. When last quarters are finally ready to reveal themselves, it may come as quite a shock to others. Rudar makes the astute observation that last quarter moon phase people are being asked for their ultimate constructive purpose is to be part of the deconstructive and destructuring process, which helps to break down whatever in oneself or one community or society no longer positively contributes to the evolutionary process, but instead stands in the way. In the process of letting go, last quarter people should not necessarily discard everything. There often remains something of the past that is essential value of timeless meaning. This essence in the harvest of understanding from the cycle has now need to infuse into the kernel of the next developing seed. Those people who were born while the waning moon is rushing to connect with the sun and called to reorganize their thought around some source of creative potentialities. The image is yet unformed, and it may only be a vague outline of something new intuited in the fading lunar light. In the way of the last quarter moon phase people, through keen mental discrimination on the ideological level, participate in the formation of visualization of the future to be. The underlying pattern of the life of the last quarter types is the continual 90-degree shift away from the attitudes and assumptions in which they were born and towards the embodiment of an ideological system based on the intimations of the future.